As of late 2025, it's estimated that over 800 million people are using ChatGPT on a weekly basis. Almost half of them are using ChatGPT to talk about their personal problems. This can vary. Some people use it to talk about the options that they're facing in their lives, while some people use it as a full-blown 24/7 therapist. It's easy to see why someone would go this route. First, it's cheaper than therapy. It's less judgmental than a therapist. It's available 24/7. It keeps a memory about you, your circumstances, and your goals so that every answer is tailored specifically to you. In a world where more and more people are struggling with their mental health, something like this should be a net positive, right? As with everything having to do with the topic of artificial intelligence, I think the answer is a lot more complicated than that. Judging from my own personal experience, I think that this phenomenon is going to end up doing a lot more damage than it does good. Like most people, I started using ChatGPT a few years ago. I'd see the posts on LinkedIn about how productive the early adapters were becoming, and I bought into the fear of being left behind that a lot of that crowd likes to push. And like most people, I started using it in a pretty basic way. I just treated it like a better version of Google. Ask it a hyper-specific question, get a hyper-specific result. Something you could never find on a blog post or in a YouTube video. It seemed like me, the user, was finally able to access the entirety of the internet in an efficient and effective way. Eventually, my prompts got a lot more personal. I started telling it about my fitness goals. I started having it build my meal plan. I started to tell it about my life goals. I asked it for plans that I could use to help me reach a breakthrough and finally make the progress in life that I so desperately wanted at the time. Before I knew it, this website knew who I was, what I wanted to become, and it would listen to the same thoughts, fears, and concerns without ever complaining. It was doing a major chunk of my work for me. It was reaffirming my ideas and my feelings, and it was making me feel like I was building something meaningful in my life. It became a tab that was always open on my computer and on my phone. I'm guessing a lot of people started using it in the exact same way. I think once we realized how specific we could get with these questions and these queries, the more we started to not necessarily abuse it, but the more we really started to hammer in with our own personal questions, with stuff that we couldn't find on a Reddit post, really just trying to find answers that probably aren't meant to be found online. As you can imagine, this feeling became pretty intoxicating. This website was producing thoughts in seconds that I would have taken hours to journal about. I felt like I was being shown new ideas, but nothing that was so out of left field that it challenged my current way of thinking. Best of all, it never got sick of me. I think I'd made hundreds of different optimal schedules to follow that would help me achieve my goals in whatever time frame I wanted to. It was patient with me when I'd switch those goals every week when a new idea came into my brain. It was encouraging to me when I explained my frustrations, and it would offer comforting solutions. I like to call it a thought partner, but in reality, it was carrying the relationship. I realized that I'd ask questions that I could previously figure out myself with like 30 seconds of silence and a little bit of determination, but with it there, just plug it in, there it is. This led me to be unwilling to start anything. Yes, I had all of this information right there in front of me, but what if there was a better way? What if there was just some magical prompt that I was completely missing? What if there was a better prompt I wasn't giving it, or a key piece of information that I had left out that would change everything? Again, work smarter, not harder, right? I'd never start working on the actual work that I needed to do, but instead I would just keep feeding it information, hoping somehow that some sort of magical shortcut would appear on that screen. And I think that's the big fear that the AI community is kind of pushing out. This fear that people are going to be working hard when they could have just worked a little bit smarter and gotten so much further. They love to sell this idea that your effort is being wasted if you're not using AI as some sort of superpower. They love to push this idea that the people who use AI are going to replace the people who don't use AI because they're going to know all the secret prompts, all the secret keys. And I bought into that fear for so long that I started to just kind of get stuck in this cycle where I am just looking for the right prompt, trying to tweak things, trying to find the better way so that I could just avoid the work. As this cycle continued, I continued to dig deeper and deeper into my psyche when I gave it a prompt. I was telling this website things I hadn't even told my wife or my closest friends. And honestly, how could I not? At this point, it knew me. When I talked to it, it felt like I was talking to an older, wiser me, someone who understood what I wanted in the world and who sympathized with my reasonings as to why I don't currently have it. Could I have talked to real people about these problems? Absolutely. But they're human beings. They'd get annoyed with my endless questions. They'd get tired of my excuses. They'd call me out on some of the things that I was saying or feeling. They'd offer advice that honestly, I just didn't want to hear. Or worst of all, they'd eventually want to talk about them and their experiences. At that point, I wasn't interested in that. At least that's the unspoken fear that comes with real vulnerability. I preferred life in my self-constructed echo chamber. This didn't feel like narcissism. It felt like the digital expansion of my brain, one that had the power of the internet behind it. This way was so much easier. I felt like I was making so much progress in my life. I was expressing myself. I had a partner in place who could help me reach these heights, and it would always tell me things that I wanted to hear. Key right there. And honestly, I think that's kind of the scary thing as to where we're heading. I think a lot of us are going to prefer to talk to this robot that gives you all the upsides of venting to a friend with none of the downsides. You get to be the center, the star of the show the entire time. You don't have to take other feelings into consideration. You can be vulnerable. You don't actually have to risk anything. And while that feels nice in the moment, risk is where the actual growth happens. In terms of my output, I had never been more productive. I was producing more at work than ever before, and I felt like my inner monologue was evolving faster than it ever could with a pen and paper. But when I looked up months later, not only was I in the same position in life, but my brain had gotten noticeably weaker. Your boy got dumber. Writing simple emails felt like a challenge. I'd stare at the cursor on a screen for minutes without touching a key. The simplest tasks, the stuff I could do in 10 minutes a year ago, felt monumental. Rather than trying to attack that work head on, I'd keep prompting my computer to try and help me find some sort of workaround before eventually just submitting to the work that it gave me. Things were getting done for me, but none of it felt like me. I didn't actually do anything. Someone else did a bad job for me, and I just pretended that it was mine. I'd leave work not having created anything new whatsoever. I wasn't building any real skills or getting mentally stronger. I had just found a tool that would keep me living a pretty passable life. And I remember late last year, I was building the marketing plan for my job for the upcoming year, and honestly, pretty much all of that, looking back at it now, was AI generated, which is fine because I think I fed it a lot of good information, and I think I agree with what it put out, but that was like a 25-page project that was done in just a few hours, and that just kind of gave me time to do what? Like scroll social media the rest of the week. I feel like I didn't actually learn the skill set of building my own marketing plan. That was my first time trying it, and I robbed myself of that opportunity to really sit down and build that for myself. So I feel like doing these things is just cheating us of actually growing and actually becoming the person that we want to become. I'm assuming some of you have felt this way as well. At first, I was mad at myself for allowing myself to basically lose months of my life and a lot of brain power living this way. I had allowed my brain, my skill set, and parts of my psyche to mutate into something weird, something different, something that felt comfortable, but not natural. But then I realized that this is the goal of ChatGPT all along. The number one selling point in any product right now in 2025 and beyond is comfort and convenience. We're all paying extra for the easy road. Marketers and product designers have realized that when given the chance, humanity will always optimize for ease. We don't want years of clean eating and exercise. We want Ozempic. We don't want to spend years journaling, meditating, or practicing real mindfulness. We want to go on the weekend retreat that will change us overnight. Everywhere we look, comfort is being sold to us, disguised as productivity. We have an inherent fear of being left behind or doing work that we don't need to be doing. Again, work smarter, not harder. The idea of spending months or years learning something or developing a craft only for it to not pay off in the end is terrifying and humiliating. AI is comfort for the brain. It allows us to experiment with ideas without committing, without actually putting in the work itself that grows us. It's all width, it's not depth at all. Muscles have to be strained to grow, and our brain is the same way. AI and new tools like it allow us to become the thing we want to become without having to do the thing that is required In some instances, I think that's really exciting, but it's a drug. Too much of it is going to lead to real problems. The best explanation I've heard for the positives of AI is it allows us to become the jockey of our life in a new way. We can reinvent our identity and become someone that we want to become, which I think is a great thing. It's going to knock down a lot of the barriers that it takes to learn these skills and to become that artist we want to be, to become a business owner that we want to be. It's going to even the playing field for a lot of people. And I think that's awesome. But I think there's a real risk of if you're not learning these skills for yourself, how are you going to actually handle yourself when you're in those rooms? How are you going to behave? How are you going to act? How are you going to thrive in those situations without having developed that skill set? I think in today's society, we tend to view life as a checklist rather than a journey. We have places we want to go or things we want to accomplish, but if we can avoid the hard parts to get there faster, then it feels like we have an obligation to ourselves to do that. I think it's all a lesson in desire. We want results so bad, and we don't care for all the lessons we have to learn and all of the failures we have to endure in order to get that result. In fact, if we can skip them, the better. There's a difference between being a healthy person and being a thin person. Most people want to be a thin person, but they don't want to take the steps to be healthy. There's a difference between being a smart person and having the answers. We see someone who has the answers and we assume that they're smart. But if they didn't come up with the answers themselves, are they really smart? It's a common debate of inputs versus outputs. All we see externally is the outputs, so that's naturally what we want to get to. But nobody fantasizes about getting up early, eating healthy, and doing the hard work in front of you for years in order to get better. Are we actually living our life if we're skipping all of the hard parts? We claim that these goals, this vision, this is our life's work. If that's really the case, why do we want to race and find a shortcut to get to the finish line of our life's work? Unfortunately, I think that the old-fashioned advice that we got growing up is probably still the most applicable advice to this day. The key is to fall in love with doing the thing rather than the results that it brings you. I am my own greatest asset. The best thing I can do is try and fail and learn so that I develop the skill set that I need to become the person I want to become. Let's say I somehow did figure out that perfect prompt that presented me with that golden ticket opportunity that I had been scheming about and yearning for. What then? What would I even do in that situation? I wouldn't have the real world experience that I need to succeed, and I'd be screwed. So the first thing I've had to do to reverse this is to actually expect less of myself. Know that in order to really change your life, it's going to cause sacrifices, specifically sacrificing the vices or the distractions that are holding you back. Second, remove all timelines. You'll get there when you get there. All we can do is live the best day we can each day. And we can only do that by using the information we currently have in our brain and making our best guesses in that moment. You can't connect the dots looking backwards. You can only connect the dots looking forward. So stop trying to scheme up this perfect plan or this perfect route to get from point A to point B. All you can do is see what's next and go for that. Exist in the project. I've realized the only way to make progress in life is to tackle those things that are on your to-do list one at a time. We all have ideas. We all have things we want to accomplish. We all want to change in some way. Focus on living like that person today. Focus on learning the skills you need to become that person. Don't try to get there fast. How can you guarantee that you accomplish that goal in a year rather than trying to optimize your way through a 75-day sprint that you'll likely give up on? Our own brain is our number one asset. Our own skill set is what we have the choice to build. Our own unique interests and goals are the things we should be focused on solving for ourselves. Solving these problems is exactly how we grow our brain and become smarter, healthier, and more creative. It's on us to do what we need to do in order to get what we want. We basically need to let go of this idea of ending up in some certain spot, and instead we need to follow an interest and solve the problems that it presents one at a time. If we do that without stopping, we can trust that we'll end up somewhere better for us, even if it's not what we originally went after. Tools like this aren't going away anytime soon. AI is here, and I do think it's going to do a lot of good for humanity. It's something I still use every day. It helped me outline this video, but I'm doing what I can to learn how to use it in a way that complements how humans grow rather than using it to skip these things, no matter how painful they may be, and no matter how tempting it is to skip them. These tools are going to keep coming. It's going to get a lot more easy and a lot more tempting to avoid discomfort. It's on us to draw our own lines in the sand as to how we interact with them to still live a great human life rather than just a productive one. I'm not perfect at this. I'm learning every day. I think it's better to focus entirely on the things you do rather than the things you want to become. It's dull advice, but it works. The point of life isn't to have the answer, but it's to wrestle with the question. AI will give you comfort, but meaning comes from effort. Outsourcing the struggle just outsources your own growth.